Hello? Okay, let's get started. Today's lecture will be about the introduction to web programming. So as of now, I'm speaking, there are 51 teams on the project team page. There are 250 people in the class, both online and not online. So that means there are 50 people who haven't signed up for teams yet. So please find a team as soon as possible. Like, if you haven't talked to anyone yet, if you don't think you're going to find a team by the next deadline, please send us an email, okay? We can help you. We can help you find a team or find your team members if you need some. All right. So right now you probably think the workload for this class is a little bit light comparing to other 400 level classes. That's intended because you're going to learn a lot about web programming. You're going to see a lot of tools you have never seen or used, a lot of technologies you've never used. I mean, in this project, you at least need to use 5 different languages or like 4 or 5 different tools. So that takes time to learn them. We want to give you that time to figure them out. Right? So last time we had some difficulties with the video recording sound. So I think I'm going to go over them briefly again, just some of the slides. So the stage 1 of the project is functional design, description, and the ER diagram design. Right? So it's basically writing a small pitch about your project. What does your project do? Why is it helpful? So there are 3 points that we want you to emphasize on. First one is usefulness. So why is it making an impact to our daily life? What problem is it solving? It has to be significant enough that, for example, it's not like recording how many bottles of water you have drank today. And then the second one, realness. Where will you get your data from? For example, if the users are gonna type in, or you're gonna write a crawler to crawl the data from the internet. Those are 2 ways to get data. This last one, features. There are basic functionality and advanced functionality requirements. The basic functionality just requires you to do a record insert, deletion, or update. It can be anything. For example, if you have some crawled data in your database, you can do a search, and you can do an insert. If a user makes a post, that's an insert, and the user can delete the post, and that's delete, right? And as of the advanced functionality, I'll talk about this later. But it has to be advanced enough. You have to brainstorm for it. Like, and you need to program a significant amount on that feature, on the 2 features. And then lastly, the ER diagram, which is what you learned in class. It's how you design this, your database, right? How do you design a database schema? Next. Right. So as of the advanced feature, should be relevant to your main project, right? So if you decide to do a shopping website, it has to be something that helps you improve your shopping experience. And then using any raw APIs itself doesn't count, but you can do more stuff with the data you retrieve with your API. Yeah, and so it needs to be take at least 3 or 4 days of work on that per feature. If you're going to use existing libraries, for example, machine learning libraries, that's fine, but they don't count as the advanced features. You need to do a significant amount of data cleaning or pre-processing. Or you can change the source code of some libraries. Of course, it needs to be significant enough. Then, yeah, of course, you need to clearly demonstrate the functionality and the challenge while implementing it. Yes, so you can build mobile apps, that's fine, but they don't count as advanced functionalities. You need to have some like, if you're going to do a mobile app, you can do like some sort of computer vision, like scan items with your phone camera or something like that. But mobile apps themselves don't count. And the APIs itself doesn't count. This includes like Google Map API or Steam API, games API like Blizzard APIs. They don't count. And there are also like a lot of libraries online, so it's pretty trivial to use them. And IMDb API doesn't count as well. But this does count. So if you're going to write a crawler to crawl websites, to crawl movies from multiple websites, that's allowed. That can be, if it's good enough, it can be counted as advanced functionality. And there's some kind of tools that help you write SQL queries. Depends on the it gets information from the existing database. It hints the user, in this case the programmers, what kind of database name, table names it has, and to help you write SQL queries. That's sounds fancy. That's good. Yeah, and you can take topics from a research paper, a published research paper, and you probably can extend the idea beyond the paper and do some work about that. And you can, if you don't know what to do, you can still talk to us. That's fine. And then development plan, which is implementation plan. So what kind of tools you're going to use, what kind of languages you're going to use, the database. I mean, every decision comes with the situation, right? So, for example, and those are decisions that are frequently made by the startups, right? So, if your website or mobile apps needs to process like data rapidly or in real time, you probably want to use. I'm just making an example. You probably don't want to use NoSQL, but in that case, you probably want to use NoSQL instead of a relational database. If you want some performance over the development speed, you probably want to use some C++ instead of like a Python to do web programming. And then in this report, we also want you to write your how do you plan to get data for your application. Again, that's from either users or cross APIs or crawling from the web. And you're gonna also how are you gonna distribute the work among the team members. And you will also write like a milestone, like what are you gonna achieve on this date and what do you plan to achieve on that day. Stage 3. Yeah, and stage 3 is just start building the environment. But if you're gonna use cPanel, you probably have like a little work in this stage. But if you're gonna use some external servers, you probably need to set up a service on yourself. That takes a lot of time. If you're gonna use more tools, it's even harder. You need to at least have a blank website or a simple website at this time. Right, if you're building a mobile app, we can at least click open the app on your phone or tablet. And then, which is a midterm demo, which is right before the spring break, I think. So you're gonna make an appointment with us, and you need to have some data in your database. You need to have your basic functionality ready, like search, insert, delete, and we want you to write 2 advanced SQL queries. That means it has nothing to do with the advanced features. This one, it just means we want you to write SQL queries that's complicated enough for the purpose of this course. And we don't want your basic functionality to be just your login functionality. Like a lot of you just do a user login or register. That doesn't count. And you're gonna describe to us orally like what your advanced functions will be and how they work. And this is the final demo, which is just the last stage. You're gonna make an appointment with us again, and you need to have your website or mobile app finished and complete. You need to have 25 records if it's from users. If it's crawled from web, you need to have like at least 100. And you need to record a project video. You need to have some sort of narratives along it to make the viewers, the audience, understand what's the point of your project and how does it work. And then you need to write a report on it. There are more details on the website you can check. Then it's just a grading part, 4% for the first stage, 3% for stage 2 and 3, and 30% for stage 4, and 60% for the final demo. All right. So let's get started with today's content. So what is web programming? So it usually refers to the non-design aspects of building a website. So that means you're writing the mockups, which is HTML, CSS, along with it, and then the coding part, which is JavaScript or the server language you chose to use. It can be a simple static website. So that means the website doesn't make too much interaction with the server. For example, like you probably see a lot of professors' homepage. It only displays some information, but it doesn't actually retrieving any data from the server. So that's called a static page. It can also be some complex application, like the application you use daily, like Uber app. Actually, it's a really complicated and sophisticated application. So why are we doing web programming for this class? So you probably know that there is a web programming class offered, Sometimes in the university is CS498 RK, but we actually focuses on different aspects. And this time we wanted to build an app around the DBMS, which is database management system. It's what we are learning in this course. And a website or app, mobile application is there are the main entrance, the interfaces people chose to access the database. And a website is definitely cross-platform. You can use it on any computers or laptop, tablets. And for mobile apps, if you're using the right tools, it can also be cross-platform. You can just write the logic code once and probably write a view code for iOS and Android, and that runs anywhere. Okay, so how does a web-based application work? So you're going to have a client side and server side. Client side is the device, device you're going to use, right? Your laptop, tablets, your phone. And that displays the content of the application. And then it makes requests to the server to retrieve data or sense data. And the server, the server is responsible for responding to the initial request. And then it's going to send the client code to your client side. And then it might be responsible for some heavy-duty computations afterwards. So client side requests content from the server side. And it's responsible for displaying the data to user. And you can also do some lightweight computation. For example, if you're going to validate users' input, for example, if you're going to create an account, you probably want to check for special characters in the username, right? And that's doable on the client side. On the server side, it serves data according to client's request to the client. It's responsible for retrieving data and storing data. It can also do authentications and computations. It's usually the heavy-duty computations happen on the server because we don't want to slow down the users and so let me make an example of a basic workflow of your website. So usually when you go to a website, you open your browser and type in the URL, and the browser itself is a container for your client, but it's not client itself. It sends a request to the server, and the server will respond with the client code you write. And after the browser gets the client code, it actually runs the client code, which is the web page you'll see in the browser. So that can contain HTML, CSS, or JavaScript. And according to those client code, it can request more data from the server. For example, some contents are not loaded synchronously. What we say synchronously, that means all the content is loaded at once. So the first request, after the first request, it loads all the content. That means it's synchronous. But some content aren't synchronous. They are asynchronous. So that means it's requested afterwards. After you already saw your website. So the server can react to users' interactions as well. For example, if initially the user opens the website and it sees a login box that asks you to type in the username and password, after the user does that, you hit the submit button, right? So that's an asynchronous request. The client sends that request to the server, and server verifies if the information is correct. And if it's correct, then it does the corresponding computation, like retrieving data from the database. Then actually package the data into a response and sends it back to the client. And then basically your browser is going to do this in a loop. Like you can get new data, responses from servers, and send new data and requests to the server. All right. Any questions? All right. So let's talk about the client side. So it can be, there are two cases, right? Web application and mobile application. And desktop applications is pretty much the same, a little bit different. So, but that's not what we're talking about in this class. So first, the web application. This usually happens in the web browser, but you can have exceptions. For example, you can have your a application, the standalone application actually opens like a browser-like window, which still displays a web page from the internet. It's typically written in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And there are multiple permissions your application can request. But whether you're allowed to use those information, it's bounded by the browser you use. For example, like Chrome probably doesn't allow you to use Flash at this point, but some other browsers do let you use Flash. And every time you use some kind of app that's requesting your geolocation, you're probably going to get a notification from your browser as well. That's requesting permissions. For mobile apps, the popular platforms are iOS and Android. The iOS app, which is like just like any apps on Apple platform, is written in Objective-C or Swift. And the Android apps were natively written in Java. But at this point, a lot of startups use JavaScript to create mobile apps. There are frameworks which allows you to write cross-platform code in JavaScript. So that's pretty convenient. So a lot of people are doing it. And the permissions on your mobile devices are like requested at the installation time or like the usage time. So when you try to use that functionality, it may request that permission to your phone, and the user is going to decide if it's allowed or not. So the three cornerstones of web the front-end programming, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, each of them is responsible for different things. So the most basic one, HTML, it describes the content on your web page. That means what's on the web page. Do you have a title there? Do you have a paragraph there? Do you have an image there? So if it's there or not, HTML is responsible for that. And then CSS is responsible for the appearance of your content. So you put your content in the web page by using HTML, and then you use CSS to change how they look. Then the JavaScript. So using HTML and CSS alone, you already have a static website. Probably look pretty nice. But in order to make it responsive to user interactions, you're going to use JavaScript. For example, user clicks or mouse moving, those kind of things. So what does it do? What does it do when you click a button? What does it do when your mouse moves to this position of the web page? So JavaScript can help you do that. So this is a glance of what the code looks like. This is a very simple page. And I didn't put the linking of those 3 languages in the HTML, so don't worry about that now. So in the HTML code, you have this is how HTML is structured, and then but right here we can see. So here, oh, never mind. So in this line, H1, in the body tag, within the body tag, there is a line called H1 tag, header. So this just means you're going to have a header in your web page. And it's the first thing in your body content. And H1, there are like different H tags, which just sets the font size. That's what we use for headers. And then you have a div, which is a division. And you have some kind of click me text in the div. And you also have an ID comes with the div, so you can refer to a specific element in your HTML. So all my HTML here is telling the browser I'm gonna have a header here, and then I'm gonna have a click me button here. Then the CSS code. So it specifies the style of certain elements. The first one, the body, it sets the background color to some sort of color. And the header, H1 here, corresponds to this H1 HTML, and it sets the text to the center of the screen. Then the button, this is sort of different. This one is referring to a specific tag. This one is referring to a specific ID, in this case button. So it sets the background color and sets the border radius, which makes a round corner. Then the text line puts the text in the center and sets the width of the button and sets some sort of margin. Yeah, basically it's just setting the style of your content. And then there's the JavaScript code. This is saying executing the code when the window is finished loading, window.onload. So it's going to do document.getElementById button. So notice here, this div has the ID of button. So that's how we retrieve data from HTML using JavaScript. Once you click on that, we want the browser to have an alert box saying background color change, and then do document.body.style background equals to red. That actually change the background color to red. So as you can see, JavaScript can actually change the content of your web page. So this first case, it's originally this color in the CSS. And then if you use JavaScript, you can make changes to your web page. You can set the color to red. Next, let's going to show you how it looks using different technologies. So this is HTML only. Like, it only has a header and div. They're all in the top left corner without any color or font styles. It's just there. But if you put in the CSS code and link it to the HTML code, you're going to have a blue background, which is the color we set, and it actually centers all the elements to the middle of the screen. And then it says background color for the button. And you can see the button is also round corner, has round corners. And then if you set JavaScript, if you link JavaScript code to it, once you click on the button, you're going to have a alert box saying background color change, and then background color change to red. So that's like the combination of the 3 languages. Let's go into HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. There are a bunch of markup languages. HTML you probably heard of, and there is XML, and you have Markdown, which is what GitHub documentation is using. So they basically describe some sort of content of a page. Sometimes they come with style, sometimes they don't. It's a hierarchical structure language, which means you're nesting stuff within others. So like here, the outermost tag is HTML, and that's the standard for HTML code. And then within the HTML code, you're going to have a head section, which specifies the metadata of your page. That just means the information about the page. For example, sometimes you want the Google search engine to capture your page, and you will put in some specific parameters in there in order for the Google to find it. And you can also put your title in there. This title is referring to the title in your tab. So you can have multiple tabs in, like a window title. It's not the actual title in the content. And you can also have encodings of a web page. Right now, we have, if you use English only, you don't have to specify anything. But in some countries, you use other languages. You probably want to specify the encoding of a web page, so the browser understands. And so the head section doesn't contain any information that will be shown on the page. The body text does. So everything within the body tag will be shown on the page. Like we had before, header and the div of as a button shows click me. Yeah, so again, the HTML tag is a must. It has to be the outermost tag. Then you need, within HTML, you need to have head and body, and that's required for any HTML. And there are a couple more HTML tags you can use. The first one is the A tag, which is essentially a hyperlink. So it's those blue tags on web page you saw with the underscore. So if you click on it, it'll lead you to a different location. It can be a different web page, or it can be a different location on the same web page. The second one, the image tag, you can set any images. You can display any images using the image tag. It can be images on your server, or it can be images from internet, like if it's not protected. And then you have the P tag, which is a paragraph. People usually just use those P tag and div tags to organize their websites. And then you have the BR tag, which is a line break, so it starts a new line. And the div tag, which is what I use, so it's usually for grouping elements together or organizing them in a certain way. Sometimes you want to for example, you have like 5 buttons. You want to put them on the right of your screen. You probably don't want to set the positions for each of them. In this case, you can put them within a div tag and just set the styles of your div tag. So it's for grouping or organizing tags. And then lastly, I mentioned table tag, which is it's just a table, and you use tr tag to create rows and td tag to create columns. So if you have tr tags, one tr tag, that means one row, and within the tr tags you have a pair of you can have several pairs of td tags, which represents different columns. And you can set styles to all of them as well. So next, CSS. So CSS actually stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It different from the HTML code. It describes the presentation of your web page. So how it looks. And the syntax. The basic syntax is a selector, then brackets followed by the attribute you want to set and the attribute value you want to set. And you can have multiple attribute value pairs here. And then close it with the brackets. So what is a CSS selector? CSS selector can be one of the 3 cases. It can be a certain HTML tag. There's the first here, like body, H1. There are both HTML tags, right? Body tags is one of the required things within HTML tag. H1 is the header tag. So if you set styles to a tag, then all the elements on the web page using that tag will be changed to that style. So in a lot of cases, you probably don't want to do this. So in most cases, you want to use element with certain ID or class. So remember, I have a div has the button ID. You use a pound sign as a prefix to ID, and you do brackets and attribute value pairs to set the properties. If you have a class in your elements, you can use prefix a dot as prefix to refer to class. Usually the ID is assigned to. Usually ID is unique on the web page, so each element should have a unique ID. If you don't have one, that's fine. And the class is usually assigned to a number of elements. For example, probably if you're gonna display like 10 pages, you probably want to set those tags to the same class, right? Like post or page. And then the third way, you can refer to you can refer to elements with their relative ordering to other elements. For example, it's the first child of H1 tag. You can also, all the first child of H1 tag will be changed to that style. So those are the 3 selectors you can use here. It can be tags, ID, class, or other syntax which you can look up on the internet. Any questions? Anyone confused about any of this? Am I going too fast? Okay. And let's go to JavaScript. So the 2 languages, using the 2 languages I introduced can already give you a static website, which is just what the server returns to you and doesn't make any interactions with the server anymore. It's already good website if you can make it pretty. But in order to have functionalities, you need to use JavaScript. So JavaScript is the most popular language in the world in terms of usage. It's an interpreted language, so it doesn't need to be compiled to run like C++ or C. And in this case, we use it to describe the behavior of the web page. But it's generally a general purpose language, so you can use it to do other stuff. It enables the user to interact with the web page, to like button clicks, right? Like what we saw. And it can also add dynamic content to the web page. So it can be, the web page alone can just be like an image or something. And after you click some button, it can change the image to some other ones or add a text, right? So basically, JavaScript can do anything with the web page. Sorry. And it can read HTML data, like what we did was get element by ID, so it can actually retrieve HTML data by its ID or class. And then it can editing the content. It can change existing text or images. It can also change the styles of your data. And again, you can send asynchronous requests. That's what we talk about. So after your page is loaded, you probably want to register or search for something, and it can send the asynchronous requests to the server by using JavaScript. And it can also react to events such as mouse click, mouse move, window loaded. So what we saw earlier was the window.load. So it will run the function when the window finishes loading. And you can also install mouse click listeners to listen for mouse clicks. And JavaScript can also do some lightweight computation. It can do, of course, it alone can do heavy-duty computations. But in web programming, we don't want the user side to do too much computation. That'll slow the page down and affects the user experience. So we try not to do any complicated computation on users' end. You can do something like validating form data, like check for forbidden characters or inappropriate words. So JavaScript is a dynamically typed. Its variables are dynamically typed. That means it's not like C++ or C. You need to specify the type of your variable. Instead, you just do a bar, followed by your variable name. In this case, name equals to, in this case, it's a string, Joey, and then you close the statement with the semicolon. Then you can change the content anytime to anything you want. First, it's initially a string, and then you can change it to a number. That's fine. You can use element document.getElement by ID to retrieve elements. You can also do getElements by class to retrieve elements. And then you do element.style, some kind of attribute, like what we use here, document.body.style.background. So to change the styles, to change the background in this case. And then you can use element.innerHTML to change the content. It can be the text, or it can be another HTML tag. And then it has similar control flow statements as in C++ or Java. So it's pretty straightforward. So in the practice, companies or developers, they use frameworks to accelerate their development. It really relieves their pain from writing repeated code, unreasonable syntax, and unclear program structures. So those 5 front-end structures are the most popular ones you can take a look at. I'm suggesting Bootstrap Foundation for the presentation part. And if we can actually click on this to check. So this is a Bootstrap. So it has some predefined styles you can use. It has some like this style of different styles of buttons, images like border or shapes. Also have some, I think, advanced ones. You know the idea, so they're pretty similar. So I'm suggesting Bootstrap and Foundation. They're pretty easy to use, and there are some additional requirements if you're going to use the ones down here. Especially material, you need to use React.js for that. So this is just the frameworks for the presentation of your code. There's also JavaScript libraries like jQuery, React.js, Vault.js. You can Google search for that. And next, let's go to server-side technology. So it's usually responsible for data storage and computationally heavy jobs. And the code on the server side runs on the servers instead of the user browsers or laptop. You need to have a set of softwares installed on your servers. So the most importantly, the server software. So if you use cPanel, you don't need to worry about it. You already have the Apache installed and running. But if you're using your own server, you need to set up your service. I'm just making 2 examples. The 2 most popular ones on Linux system, which is Apache and the other one. And then the web programming language, there's a variety of them, but most of them aren't compiled languages like C++, because it's really frustrating to deal with pointers while you need to worry about the content of your web page. So most people decide to not use C++. So it's usually PHP, Java, Python, or Ruby. And for database, this is MySQL and PostgreSQL, SQLite. There are also other professional databases. I'm going to introduce 2 languages here, PHP and Python. So for PHP, it's designed for web development, so it comes with a lot of native functions you can use, which is pretty straightforward. So all variables in PHP starts with the $sign here. $sign foo equals to 1. It's also the variables are also dynamically typed, so it can be changed to any time at any time. Anytime to anything. And any PHP script starts with question mark PHP, ends with question mark. Alright, so here I have a variable foo, which is initially 1, then it's set to Joey again. So you don't need to write vars. You don't need to even declare them in PHP, I think. And you can have arrays, which is just array parentheses and contents separated by commas. And then you can also have associative arrays like a dictionary, which is key value pairs. Name refers to Joey, age refers to 23, gender refers to male, and then you can have an echo. It's similar to print in C++, except in this case, you're printing stuff to the web page. So this is a basic example of mixing HTML with PHP. So you can see a lot of this syntax is still HTML, but within the body tag, I have a PHP here. Then it says include some other PHP page. In this case, it's a header for my page. So you probably want to have a common header for all of your pages. It's quite convenient to do this. And then I have another div here, HTML div here, and within the div, I said if the session variable is set, it exists, and the session variable is login key is in the session variable and content equals to 1. That means the user is logged in. I'm gonna echo print this A tag, which is a tag to my profile page. If it's not the case, the user is not logged in, I'm gonna print this button instead. It's a link to my register page. That's a pretty reasonable and common thing to do, right? If the user isn't logged in, you display a register button. If the user is already logged in, you show a profile page. Then at the end, we include a footer here. So this enables us to do a modular design in web development. You don't have to write repeated code anymore. And so what we previously used was a session variable, $_session. It's a reserved variable in PHP. So after you start your session, you can use the session variable to store key value pairs on your server specific to your user. So every user will come with the unique session. So for example, if I'm going to go to my website and I'm going to make a login, after my login, my server is going to store my username in the session variable. And at any time we render the page, we can look for if the username is set in the session variable. If it's set, it means the user is already logged in. You can use it for other purposes as well. It's specific to users, so you don't need to worry about others uses your information. You use echo to render HTML code to web page, so printing elements, contents to the web page. In this example, this is a PHP function which takes up 2 parameters. The first one is array, and the second is just a variable. I'm checking if the first element in the array equals to Joey. If it's the case, returns an empty array. Then I create a new array by doing array parentheses, and then I'm writing a pretty straightforward for loops here, iterating through the passing array, append each of the prefix, each element in the array with the content in variable B. So string concatenation in PHP is actually dot instead of plus in any other languages. So that's something to note. And I do an array push and push out each element into my array and finally return the array. All right, then next is Python. So Python it's pretty straightforward. It's a general purpose programming language, so that means it doesn't come with a lot of the convenient functionalities that PHP has. So you need to use frameworks in order to program webs more conveniently. There are a lot of frameworks here. I'm suggesting these three: Django, Flask, Pyramid. Among them, Flask and Pyramids are easier to set up, but Django is more powerful and is more used in the industry. Then this is just some basics Python syntax. The first one is creating a variable 1, 2, 3 and change to string. And then you can have a list, which is like array. And they're also separated by commas, but unlike PHP, you need to have array in front of it. You just need to have square brackets around it. That just means it's a list array. You can have a dictionary, which is also, again, key value pairs. You use brackets for that. And you have key in front of the colon and value after the colon. And then you can write functions in Python. Syntax is def, function name, parentheses. In parentheses, you can have parameters as well. And you can do a colon. And then it says here, if foo equals to 1, 2, 3, I'm printing hello world. Else I'm printing destroy world. And here is a for loop in Python. So for I from 0 to the length of my list, I'm printing every element in my list. And this is pretty straightforward. And then here I'm making an example of set up a web project with Django framework. So after you install Python and Django, in the terminal, you do Django admin start project and your project name, in this case my site. And then you cd into my site and do python manage.py space start app sets for 11. So you can have multiple apps in your websites, right? So just like you have different different sub websites within a large ones. So if I do ls to show the structure of the thing I created, so it actually gives you a folder that's called your web project name, and within it generates all these predefined files. Most of them are empty. Then at this point, you can run the web server. You can do python manage.py run server. If you don't have Apache or are there any server softwares to install, you can do the Django simple server. Just for testing purposes. So we introduced two server-side languages, but then you need to make connections to the client side, right? Remember, we have code in JavaScript, but we need to get information from JavaScript, and we need to send information to JavaScript. So how do we do that? So from your client side, you send data by using GET or POST requests. So those are the two types of web requests. So GET requests, usually see that in the URLs. You have some website URLs followed by a question mark with a key value pairs, like username equals to something, and probably not password, some other things. When you do Google search, you probably see your parameters in the URL, and that's doing a GET request. And POST request is, in a sense, more secure, but it's actually not. It actually hides the information in the browser, so it sends requests in the background without showing to the ordinary users. But experienced programmers or developers can still see the content. So it's not as secure as it describes. And then that's how the front-end client side sends data to the server side. How does server side send content back to the client side? It cannot send GET or POST requests. Only servers can receive GET or POST requests. So if you're doing PHP, you do echo, right, printing contents to a web page. So if the user logged in, you probably want to print echo, some kind of hello, Joey, some sort of thing. And if you're doing Python, you don't have this convenient syntax, but you need to create a template and passing those variables data as parameters to the template. A template is just a predefined HTML page. So that's how two ways to send get or post requests. The first one is through HTML forms. So those like the login form, like you, here I'm using a form tag, and the action is login.php. So that means after submission, I'm going to send all the data to my login.php. I'm going to post all my data to login.php. And you have an input here, asks you for the name and the age and the gender, and you have a submit button down here. This is pure HTML. You can already send requests. And then you can also send requests using JavaScript, asynchronous requests. So you can construct URL, the parameters, like what I said, like name, key value pairs separated by ampersand. You create a new XML HTTP request, and you open the request, and you set the header of your request, and you send it. So this allows you to construct a more customized request. Note here, I'm using post because I'm handling user request, handling user login. So you probably don't want to show some kind of, although I don't have passwords here, but in the real cases you might have passwords. You don't want to show passwords in the URL of your section of your browser, right? So that's why you use post request. But when you're doing like search or some other things, you can use get. And how does PHP receives data? So there's a variable defined in PHP underscore server. You can check the request method if it's post or get. If it's post, and you can do underscore post and the key to retrieve data from the request. And in that case, remember we send my name, my age, my gender to the server. And in the server side, we retrieve those data by using the underscore post key names. Then I can do some kind of verification if that's really the user. And if it's the case, I set the username and information to my session, which is also another key variable, a dictionary. And then I'm going to redirect the user to another page called index.php, and that page can check for if the user is already logged in or not, and to display different contents. And if it's not a post request, we don't want user to log in through get request, so we can do echo. You cannot log in through get request. This is a pretty simple example here. And in Django, in Python, you use the Django frameworks. This is within the views.py page. So, because it's a framework, it has strictly usage of the design models. I think it uses MVC model. You can look it up online. So in this page is the view controller. So once the user enters the URL, actually here, look at the bottom code here first. It's like a router. It uses a regular expression to extract the path and sends the user to different pages. So in this case, if the user typing the URL without following anything, like just google.com without anything afterwards, it sends the user to views.index, which is a function in my views file. Here, this function is called index, so it actually sends the user to this function. So you render the page with this function, and it first again checks if the request method is get or post. If it's get, return a error message. If it's post, I think I misspelled here. This get should be post. You get parameters from post key value pairs as well. You set some kind of parameters in a dictionary form, and you have some sort of predefined index.html page. It's a template, so it also has some special syntax there that you can look up. It actually uses the parameters I passed in this case, my name, my age, and gender. Right, the most important thing, how does your server code talk to the database? In PHP, you do new MySQL with the database name, username, password, database server name. And then you construct your SQL queries. It's just a string. And then you do connection, arrow, query. So there's no dot operator in PHP. Dot was for string concatenation. So if you're going to call a function, you do the arrow sign. And in this case, it's querying the SQL query here I wrote, and store the results in my result variable. And if the result has more than 0 rows, I'm going to iterating through the rows and displaying data to the web page. So that's how you query the database from PHP. And after this is done, I close my connection to my database. In Python, the frameworks probably have some kind of wrappers to make your requests more convenient to the database. We don't want you to use those wrapper functions. We want you to write raw SQL queries for the purpose of this for this class. Like here, I'm constructing a SQL queries as well, and I just do people.objects.raw. That's sending a raw SQL query to the database. Then for the result, each row in my result, I'm appending it to my list, and then I can put my list in dictionary format as parameters and render the page with my parameters, just like what we did before. You need to look at the documentations more closely to figure out more usages. And then you can, if you decide to use PHP, you can actually try PHP in cPanel. It's already set up there. You just need to create a new page. So just go to this website, and you remember to use HTTPS instead of HTTP. And then you're gonna be asked to log in. After you log in, if you have cPanel account, you can see there's a bunch of functionalities in the page shown. And there, you click on File Manager. You can create a new file, a PHP file, in the HTML, public HTML folder. And you can write some PHP code and save it. And then you can go to your netid.web.engineering Illinois.edu/your web page to check if it's working. So that's like accessing your cPanel servers through web page. You can also access it through SSH from your Linux terminals or macOS terminals. You can do SSH -x your netid at web.engineering.illinois.edu, and it'll ask for the password. After you log in, you can go to the public HTML folder where you can upload and write code as well. You can also request a shared cPanel account. So if you don't create a shared cPanel account, you have your individual account, but you need to give your accounts to your team members. That's not too appropriate in this case. So you probably want to request for a shared cPanel account where multiple NetIDs can log into a common account. You can go to this website to request for one. One team can only request one cPanel account. And you can go to this website to check on the documentations for additional frameworks or services that you can use on cPanel. If you have trouble setting up or accessing cPanel, you can contact engineering IT through email. But if you decide to use Python, for example, it's probably going to be more complicated on cPanel. And it's going to be much more complicated if you choose to use your own server. but you can have advantage of doing that as well, so that's fine. It depends on what you want to do. The final tip is start early. As you can see, there were a lot of tools and languages introduced. And you haven't even started with SQL, real SQL queries, right, in this course. So you probably want to start ahead and take a look at those syntax and how to use the tools, how to connect them together, how to actually display a page and making requests and responses. Do a lot more research to decide what tools to use. And also, if you decide to use your own environment, it takes a lot of time to set it up. So just be aware of that. I think that's it. Any questions? Sorry, the last half was a little bit rushed, so we don't have much time. If you have questions, yeah.
Are you posting these online?
Yes. So the question is whether I'm posting the slides online. Yes, I will post this after the lecture. Yeah, I'm just suggesting that you read documentations. They're pretty helpful to get you started. I have office hour at 11, so if you want to talk about your project ideas, I'll be there. I might be a little bit late because I have we have a staff meeting before that. I'll try to be there.
I have a quick question about the project survey. So